Hello and welcome back to League Talk, the podcast all about coaching, management and all things League of Legends. My name is AJ and on today's episode we're going to try something new. Now actually when we look back at the first ever podcast I did, I sort of did this format where I was going to call it This Week in League, but basically we're going to go over a couple of things that have been happening in the last week, maybe a little bit longer, that have all been to do with League of Legends, all been to do with the stuff that's going on recently, whether that's player stuff, whether that's managing, whether that's coaching, whether that's performance, anything like that. Obviously for me there's going to be a bit of a spin that I can sort of talk about a little bit more, to do with performance coaching, to do with anything that I know well. So that's what the reference will be, all of this sort of stuff. If you do enjoy this, let me know, because the podcast has been doing super well. It's been sort of plateauing recently, so I'm trying to find out why. I'm trying to see if there's some more content that I can bring that's a bit more interesting. I think I'm quite happy keeping on growing it at the rate that I am. So if you're listening to this and you're enjoying it, do get in contact. I'd really like to hear from you guys. It would mean the world to me if you left a review on Apple, on Spotify, anything like that. So yeah, get in contact, let me know what you're thinking. So the topics that we're going to have a little talk about this week is MSI, EU Masters, Bootcamps in general, and then Yuumi a little bit as well, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But the first thing that we're going to talk about is MSI. Now, the play-ins for MSI are pretty much underway now, and they're happening as we speak. So there's a couple of things to touch on here, and the play-ins, basically there's 8 teams, in which one from each group, so 4 in a group, one from each group are going to come out, and they're either going to play Team Liquid or Flash Wolves. Now, for me, there's a couple of things to touch on. And the first thing that I really wanted to talk about was the mindset, because this is going to be really interesting for me, and sort of figuring out how the teams are going to be thinking, I think will show a lot in the way that they play. So let me talk about it a little bit more. I'll give some examples. So for example, are the players very fired up to take down their opponents and then try and take down the raid bosses as such in Flash Wolves and Team Liquid? Or is the mindset going to be a flippant one, as the task is really is quite enormous, especially for the team that's going up against Team Liquid? Now, arguably Flash Wolves have taken a massive hit when they lost Maple Carter, but the Team Liquid team is looking pretty strong. And if you looked at Kays, who is the analyst for Team Liquid, his recent tweet is saying that people that are sleeping on Team Liquid are going to be surprised. He believes they've got the best, if not the second best bot lane in MSI, in Doublelift and Core JJ. So arguably these raid bosses are going to be huge, especially to come up against in such a what would be considered a wildcard region. They're generally seen as a lesser region compared to even NA, who are considered less than EU at the moment. But a lot of people are sort of going, first place is IG, second place SKT, third place is going to be EU, and then fourth is going to be Team Liquid. But I'm super interested to see how the play-ins go. We've spoken a little bit about the flow state in the past, as this is the best mindset for people who are trying to perform, but this can have its drawbacks, as one may struggle to get fired up or hyped as such. And I feel that this level of motivation, that type of motivation, that sort of fired up nature, is great for this predicament, especially going up against a team where you're considered the underdogs. Being in the flow state, to me, is really good. It's good for performance, it's good for work, for example. If you're in the flow state where there's little distractions, your mind is on the task and only on the task, that's great. But if you're not fired up, if you're not motivated in that sort of physical, mental, like fist pumping sort of way, I'm interested to see how that's going to go. But talking more about mindset, I'm super interested to see how TL and Flash Wolves are going to be. If they're going to be too laid back, or will they be able to take their opponents seriously? You would hope, due to the nature of MSI, due to the nature of play-ins, of worlds and things like that, that the idea of an upset isn't out of their mind altogether, and they'll be able to take each game as it comes. I saw something super interesting on the most recent episode of, I think it was TSM Legends. Doublelift was commenting on it in his stream, and he was saying that the worst thing that you can do when you're losing is talk about that loss, when you've lost. So he was talking about the 3-2, and they were going over, and TSM were going over all the things that they did wrong, and maybe like a little VOD review type of thing, and he believed that that's just the worst thing that you can do. So he understands what it's like to lose, he understands what it's like to be upset, he understands what it's like to experience a loss when you shouldn't have necessarily. Maybe that's just on paper, who knows. But that was super interesting for me, and hopefully that means that he won't be laid back, the team won't be laid back, they will take the game seriously. I think Core JJ is a very sort of cerebral player as well, so I'm super interested to see how he's going to be in that environment, and hopefully they won't have this laid back mentality. But as we speak, the play-ins are happening. I really have no idea who's going to get to the top in this scenario, but I think that if they can get fired up, they are more likely to beat Team Liquid and Flash Wolves, but it seems like a really monstrous sort of gigantic task for them here. So that was the thing that I kind of wanted to touch on with MSI and see how that was going to go. Because I think mindset is going to be key for play-ins, and I think if they can achieve better performance through mindset, through certain things like nutrition, exercise, I think that's going to do really well for them. But that sort of ties up most of the MSI stuff that I was interested in talking about. But the next thing was to do with EU Masters. Now, this has come to a close with a super interesting bracket of quarters, semis and finals. So Misfits Premier from the French League came away with the win after a miracle run from play-ins. The semis were both 2-0 wins for SK and Misfits, and then Misfits took a convincing 3-0 win over SK. Now, the UK guys, Fnatic Rising did super well. We also had Diabolus. They unfortunately dipped out a little bit earlier. But UK scene, from what I understand, I haven't been involved in it in that much, just to really be honest. But it seemed like it was a bit of a joke region for some reason. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it's just because of the way that they've been performing of recent. I'm not sure, as I say. But Fnatic Rising did really well. Super proud to be a part of the UK scene in this scenario. But Misfits were, it seemed, a real step above. If SK 2-0'd Fnatic, then got 3-0'd by Misfits, it really was a stomp, really. And the team seemed to be surprised. They didn't expect it as much. Jessage was coaching, and he hadn't been coaching for very long. Scrims were difficult from what I understand, but they were absolutely thrilled. They were all super happy, but not expecting it, which I think is nice. I think it's good to have that sort of grounded nature where they're like, okay, we came fourth. They actually came fourth in the French League from what I understand. But the standout performance to me was Leader, Misfits' mid laner, who really stood out as the one to watch, and I'm pretty sure that we'll be seeing him in the LEC in the not too distant future. To me, this whole experience for EU Masters shows again that Misfits as an organisation I think is a very good one. I think is a very strong organisation. Although they struggled in the LEC this split, I don't think that was to do with the organisational issues. I think they act relatively quickly, I think, which is a good thing, especially when it came to Hussein Moose coming back in the LEC. But I think this shows that something is going really right for Misfits, especially when they finished fourth in the regular season. The ability to turn this around, the ability to go from fourth in the regular season to winning EU Masters is a huge step. So congratulations to them. It's testament to the organisation and the backroom staff, such as Jess's. So I think that was an amazing run for them, especially to go from play-ins all the way to winning. They've done really well, so props to them. Congrats to Misfits for that. I'll be super interested to see how the main teams went on to help their academies and whether Misfits used their main team as they were not in playoffs. So when I'm talking about that, the main team, obviously Misfits, Fnatic, SK, they're all academy teams. So which means they all have an LEC roster. I'd be super interested to find out if those LEC rosters were actually helping. Because Misfits weren't in playoffs, so they had plenty of time to scrim around and help the academy team. Fnatic, they dipped out. They didn't make it to the final, unfortunately, for the LEC, so they might have been able to help Fnatic Rising. I think if they don't do that, that's a huge mistake. Whilst it might be demotivating because they are most likely to lose. If they're beating if the academy team's beating the LEC roster, then something's probably going wrong there. But it might be demoralising, demotivating because they're most likely to lose. But I think if you're missing and passing up on a practice like that, I think again it's a real mistake on their part. So I hope that they had helped their academy teams because organisations should take EU Masters seriously, even if they are in the LEC. So that sort of leads quite nicely onto boot camping. Now, a lot of teams are boot camping, building up to MSI, boot camping for next split. I know SOAS, for example, speaking of Misfits, is in Korea at the moment doing some streaming out there and soaking up the solo queue goodness. But TL and G2 are boot camping in Korea before flying to Vietnam. They have come back now, obviously, with the play-ins happening, or at least TL have for sure. I don't know about G2. Number one, the best thing about this, and this is something that I've sort of learnt from UFC and MMA, is to do with time difference. And obviously, I don't travel enough for time difference to properly affect me. I have experienced jet lag and things like that, but not like awfully. The time difference is 2 hours from Vietnam to Korea. I can't remember which one is further ahead. But the time difference is only 2 hours compared to America, compared to, I don't know, Berlin, for example. That's significantly better. So that means that they're not going to have to experience jet lag when they go to Korea, which is going to be huge. So if they go to Vietnam for MSI. So when they're in Korea, they can then adjust their bodies, adjust themselves in the 2 or 3 weeks that they have in Korea for the jet lag. So they will make the transition to Vietnam being significantly easier. Now, I think that is such a big thing. And if it's something that they didn't think about, it was an amazing piece of luck. But they've been very lucky and should have capitalized on that very, very quickly. Positive number one. The second one is obviously solo queue in Korea is rife with different regions playing on the server. Plus, the standard is significantly higher, as this has something to do with the sheer amount of people on the server. But in essence, if you have 1 million people playing on a server comparative to 100 people, the chances of those 1 million people experiencing better players, getting better at the game, having the competition to be better and to push themselves is significantly higher, of course. Now, the numbers don't work out that way, but the more people on the server, theoretically, the better the server will be, just because of sort of talent distribution and how people can play more competitively because the talent they're playing against is better. It's sort of a cycle where everyone gets better always. So that's obviously a huge plus. I know that a lot of people in the Japanese region, I believe some people from the Chinese region and the Vietnamese region also play on Korea. So it's got an amalgamation of different play styles, an amalgamation of different talent. So that's also a really, really good thing. But G2's team, being Wonder, Yankos, Perks, Caps, and Promiscu, there was a Reddit thread that said Wonder, Yankos, Perks, Caps, and even Promiscu have made it to Master. And that was as of the 29th of April. And that's in Korea. And at the point of the 29th, actually Perks was Grandmaster. So they're getting better and better. They're really doing well. Pretty unfortunate for Promiscu. Obviously, Mickey X isn't playing solo queue. I don't know if he's not playing at all, but he's playing significantly limited amounts of solo queue. He's not scrimming as much. Promiscu, I believe, is starting, and he's sort of on-looking, but he will be getting playtime. Some people have said from day one. Some people have said from semi-finals, so I'm super interested to see how that goes. But if G2's team within sort of a week or so of being there already in Masters, that's pretty promising. Because I know that the solo queue is very different. From what I understand, it's a little bit more tilting. Mumus and I spoke about that after his sort of time spent in Korea when he was boot camping out there. I think it was with Ever 8, I think is the team that he was with, but I can't remember for a fact. But the boot camps seem to be super successful. I'm super glad that G2 are doing well. I'm super glad that TL are out there. I think it's really, really good. But the boot camps, I think, is a hugely positive thing, especially because of the time difference. I think that's one huge takeaway. They're going to be able to adjust rather than being jet lagged in Vietnam, which I think is massive. Now, the last part before we finish this little podcast off is to do with Yuumi. Now, Yuumi coming out has begged a lot of questions with pro play and how viable this champion will be. Some people are saying she's too simple, and I actually don't agree with this criticism of her being too simple. Even if you accept that she is too simple, which I don't think she is, it's difficult to sort of say what is too simple. How do you describe too simple in League of Legends? But even if you concede the argument that she is too simple, number one, the game needs to have simple champions. The likes of Garen need to be there. The likes of Lux need to be there. And even if Yuumi is one of those champions need to be there. It's a good sort of power curve in a way to get people into the game. I think if you have this super high barrier to entry of League of Legends, I just don't think many people will be playing. I think having Warwick there, for example, keeps people adhered to the game, keeps people interested, and keeps people playing. Just because the ability to achieve is something that helps adherence. So, for example, if you're going to the gym, and you have noticed in 1 month you've put on muscle mass and it's visible, you can see that you have gained muscle mass in the mirror, it's an eye test, you're more likely to continue on with the gym. I think if you're noticing that you're getting better at the game because you're playing a simple champion, and that really does help you getting better at the game. It's, for example, the reason that LS talks a lot about playing Annie. It's simple, you can focus on other things. I think the same sort of merit is there, that if the champion is simple, you're more likely to play the game more, adhere, have success. So yeah, I think that's one thing that I would like to say. I think the second thing is the fact that I don't agree with this criticism. It comes from the idea of loving the idea of developing a new playstyle. Now, what I mean by that is when certain champions come out or certain items come out, playstyles change. And I think that when they have released a certain bunch of champions, i.e. Pyke or Ivern, they've developed a new playstyle, or even changing what the norm is. So much like Ivern, much like Pyke, Ivern has a completely new playstyle. You need to think about what you're doing, where you're going, who you're pathing to, lots of different things, because Ivern's completely different to any other jungler. And Pyke, he has changed what the norm is for it to be a support. That's sort of a carry support, which I think was an amazing addition to the game. So I think those two things are going to be massive. I really, really like the fact that Yuumi is there. The only criticism I have is it sort of seems like it's basically from LS. I heard this in one of his videos. It seems like Yuumi is a bit like airy, basically, which I found quite interesting. But I think there's going to be a whole new playstyle, and Yuumi's going to be at the forefront of that, and I think that's wonderful. So congratulations to Riot for doing that. I think Riot gets a lot of unnecessary criticism, especially with champion design. And I think it's going to be good. I'm super interested to see where it goes. Is it competitively viable? I'm not sure. We will be seeing soon of that, I am sure. But that pretty much sums up the four things that I wanted to talk about. We spoke a little bit about MSI and the play-ins and the mindset that those teams are going to have in the play-ins. We then spoke about EU Masters and how well Misfits did, and something going right in the backroom staff, in the organisation, so testament to those guys. And the boot camps as well, between TL, G2, getting to Masters, Grandmasters in some situations, and the wonderful addition of being able to avoid jet lag as you get closer to MSI. And then finally Yuumi coming out, the playstyle differences, how that's going to help adherence, how that's going to help people getting into the game, and how we need easy champions. We need simple champions to focus on other things. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, as I said at the start, do let me know. I'm super, super interested. You can see if you're watching the video there. My Twitter and Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. I also have the website now, so I will be changing that soon. But on Twitter, it is @LeagueTalkShow. On Instagram, it's @League_Talk. Get in contact with me, man. My DMs are always open. I'm super interested to help and hear. Obviously, my background in performance coaching, working with a team in the UK leagues, working with the coaching that I've done all my life in traditional sports. I'm looking to apply that to as much as I can to League of Legends, and I think that is something that is happening. So if you enjoyed it, let me know. Leave a review. I would love to see what you guys think. Even if it's 1 star and you hate it, leave the review. I want feedback. It's sort of an oxygen in a way. I would love to know what's going right and what's going wrong. So I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and I will see you on the next one.